Hey y'all, hey, Kasey here. So it has been a while. So for those of you who are watching now, who are possibly new and have no idea who I am, my name is Kasey King. I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and sex therapist in Fort Worth, Texas. I am licensed in the states of Texas and Mississippi. I am also a marriage and relationship educator. So I have bios everywhere. You can research me and all those things. I kind of want to get into today the conversation that Monique had with Shannon Sharp. So if you haven't seen that video, please go back and watch it. A lot of it was amazing. I'm not about to get into the comedic, messy part of it. I want to get into the marriage part because there are so many things that I just found very intriguing. And it was a couple of things that kind of took me aback a little bit, and I had to really process it and reel myself in. So if you haven't watched the YouTube video or the interview on Club ShayShay, it's about 2.5, almost 3 hours, and it's really worth all the time. Take your time, watch it in bites if you so desire. I am not going to give full clip notes here, but there are some things that relate to the work that I do that I felt was important to have a conversation about, especially when it comes to love, marriage, and relationships. So here are a couple of things, and I'm so excited to get into this with you. One thing she said that stood out to me was her husband taught her how to be a woman. And I can go on and on and on about that statement and her being failed in life by her parents. If you don't know her history, she was a victim of or a survivor of sexual abuse by her brother. She tells her own story. Oprah had him on and told a part of that story as well. But she was not taken great care of by her parents and had a very troubled life. And she also spoke of how amazing her grandmother was, who took care of her. I believe, as that story goes, when she went to tell them about what he did to her, they shipped her off or sent her off to live with her grandmother. That's what I read somewhere, not completely sure how true it is. But when she said that he taught her how to be a woman, I had to kind of sit back in that and was like, okay, so a man taught you how to be a woman. I I really had to sit and dissect that. Because it made me feel a certain type of way. That how did your husband teach you, about you and how to take care of yourself? What does it mean to, be a woman, when he does not have that experience? But in my thinking and in my processing, you know, I can probably say a lot of things about a man on how to be a good man and what it looks like to take care of a woman because I've been with men, right? So I had to get beside myself from that statement and another one to really hone in on what she meant by that. And not that he physically taught her the ways of a woman, but he was patient with her. He gave her the space to figure herself out, to figure life out. He held on to her. He was in her life since they were kids. I believe she said elementary school. So he was just graceful with her. Another thing that she said, now this is the one that kind of rubbed me a little bit like, was she learned her place. When she said that, of course, the Black girl in me was learned your place. What the hell does that mean? But again, in true form, I sat with that. I processed that. What does she mean that she learned her place? And this is a lesson that we all can get out of just life, love, relationships, our own marriages, our own relationships. And not that she learned her place or learned her role. However, we all have a place. We all have a role. So when she said that, it shocked me. But in my processing with that, I was like, wow, she grew up. And this was the marriage that grew her into the woman that she needed to be, into the partner that she needed to be. And this was on her third try. She said the other ones don't count, but legally, this was her third marriage. I believe she said the first one, the second one was because she just couldn't pay rent. She needed someone to help pay bills. The first one, I can't remember the whole story. You can go back and watch the interview for all of that. But she learned her place. And she talked about her trauma and just how aggressive she was and how she led with that aggressiveness, how she was very, what's the word I'm looking for? She was traumatized by the way that her father didn't take care of her, the way one of her brothers took advantage of her, that made her very angry. She was an angry woman, and she led with her trauma. I want you to hear that. She led with her trauma. She was very aggressive. She was very dominant. And there's nothing wrong with being a dominant woman, because there are many spaces where we have to be dominant, where it's necessary. But she was dominant in all spaces of her life where she could not love properly. She didn't love herself. And in her leading with trauma, she bottled in all that power and all that control. And that's how she led her relationships. The way her brother took advantage of her, that's the way she picked and chose and took advantage of other men. Like she said, she would go in different cities and she had her pick of the litter. They came to her and she picked who she wanted. She didn't value herself. And not saying that there is anything wrong, with having multiple partners, or having just a lot of sex. But for her and her trauma, she didn't know her value as a woman. She didn't know her worth. Her self-esteem was low. She was leading with her trauma. She let her trauma lead. And Monique didn't lead. That aggressive kid that wasn't going to let anyone take advantage of her, harm her, use her, or mistreat her again. That's who was leading in much of her life, until she found someone to be patient with her. She found someone and that gave her the time and the space to figure herself out and love her through every stage. I'm going to repeat that because it's important. He loved her through every stage of her growth. That's key. As someone who's married, I can say, just being from the South, not being raised for a certain part of my life, without a man, and being around mostly women who worked hard, who were dominant, who pretty much spearheaded everything. The very pivotal years in my teenage life, there was no man there to really guide and to lead me. It was women, and it was hard working women for the most part. So they were not there emotionally. I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't get it. And even for when I had a man in the house, I didn't see husband-wife love. I didn't see two people who loved each other. So I completely get that when she said that she learned her place. That can rub people the wrong way, like it did me for about a good 45 seconds, until we really sit and look at marriage and relationships. We all have a place. And that's on you and your partner to talk about and figure out, where do we both lead? Because we both lead in particular areas. If you don't know the role of the lion and lioness, go look it up. My husband had to teach me about it, actually talk to me about it. The woman went out and got while the man was back protecting the kingdom, while the woman went out, took care of business, did the work, got the food. That's where the woman leads, in the kingdom. We all have a place, we all have a role. And this is how sometimes we get confused in our relationships. We both want to lead in the same thing at the same time, and we are butting heads. It's only one seat at the head of the table. It's only one seat at the head of the table. And just because that's and I don't want to say just leader, but if that is whatever you call it in your house, the leader, the protector, the provider, the head, whoever, I don't know, my table is a square. My table is a square, not a rectangle. So it may look a little bit different from yours. However, in my space, it doesn't matter who sits where because we know what role each person feels. But for her, in her space, she was the leader in all of her relationships, her trauma led. She was the dominant person in love, in business, and in just her relationships. Because that little kid inside of her wanted to protect herself. So she said he taught her how to be a woman. She learned her place. And sometimes we don't know what our place is in our own relationships. That's where it can fall short. We aren't having conversations about what our expectations are. Am I able to do this? Who gave me this role? I didn't give myself this role. I didn't say I wanted this role. Are we having those conversations? Are we communicating that? Do you understand what your role is in your household? Do you know what your place is? Do you know where you fit in? I talk to many men who say, hey, I don't know where my place is. The house just runs and I just kind of come and I don't know where I'm at. We're a military family. So we have plenty moments like that where, hey, you leave, life has to keep going because kids have to get raised. So I have to feel all of these, and when you come back, it's like double dutch. We got to figure out, we got to figure out the rhythm all over again. So many people lead a life that way. I don't know where I fit in. I don't know what I need from you. I don't know. And so for her, she had to learn that it's okay to just take your shoulders down. It's okay that you don't have to let your trauma lead. And she shouted out her psychologist. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time looking it up. I hope it's still in my phone because when she had that conversation, I looked her up. I think she's in Georgia. Okay. I did two little scrolls. I don't see her. I must have closed it off my page, but she's a Black psychologist in Georgia. And when she called her name, I said, okay, she's about to get some people because Monique shouted her out on 5 million views on Club ShayShay, okay? But she said between her therapist and her husband were saying the same thing. But her therapist told her that she needed to hear it from somebody else, someone who was close to her. And she did the work. She worked through her trauma. She learned her place. She learned her power. Knowing your place is knowing your power. Knowing your place is knowing your power. I'm about to write that down, y'all, because that's a gem. Knowing your place is knowing your power. How can you know what your gifts are when you don't know where you belong? That's another one. How can you know where your gifts are if you don't know where you belong? Because if you knew your space, if you knew where you belong, if you knew what your role was, wow, you'll know how to utilize that source a whole lot more. So I can literally go on this on this soapbox, but how did this shape her marriage? He was patient with her. He didn't judge her. She even talked about, and a lot of people judged her on this. That's your ignorant selves. She talked about her life. She talked about her sexual relationships. He didn't judge her. He loved her. He leaned into her. He was patient with her. And the thing about it is he knew all of that because he's been in her life her whole life. He waited on her. That was the best friend. Now I'm gonna tell you the one thing that was cringy for me when she kept saying that was her brother, that was her brother, that was her brother. I'm not gonna go down the whole trauma and therapeutic thing. I'm not gonna do that. But just going from brother to husband, she did say once or twice it was best friend, but I can count, oh my gosh, on I think about 5 or 6 times she was saying that, hey, first that was her brother. They were close. That was her brother, but then you're gonna see your brother and see your best friend, and they seen you naked and all these things. Anywho, but he's been with her a whole life. And in that, he gave her the space to grow. He gave her the space to be. He never pressured her. He never told her to know her place. He gave her time to learn her place. And he led with that. He didn't leave her because she was aggressive. He loved her through her aggressiveness because he knew it was something deeper. He knew who she truly was, on top of the girl that was traumatized, the girl who family didn't take care of her or love her in the way that she needed. She had a right to be angry. He understood that. He took his time. He gave her time to learn her space, to value herself, to know where she actually fit into the relationship. Wow. How amazing is that? He didn't meet her with aggression. He loved her through it. What if he would have met her? She's aggressive. I'm gonna meet you with my aggression. You want to be the head of the table? No, I'm the head of the table. He said, okay, I'm gonna give you that. I'm gonna love you through that. I'm gonna love you through that. I'm gonna be here with you while you work through your trauma. I'm gonna love you through it all. And the takeaway from this, is so easy to give up. It's so easy. I'm not going to say that. It's not always easy to give up. We take the easy way out sometimes, but going through a process such as a divorce is not always easy. The hard part is really sticking it through. The hard part is not knowing how long it's going to take. And I'm not saying all situations you should be there waiting 10, 15 years. But you give your partner time to evolve. He didn't rush her growth because he knew who his best friend was. He leaned into it. He loved her through it. And when you have someone in your life like that, that's willing to love you through all of your stuff, be patient with you through all of your stuff, and say, hey, go get some help. I'm going to be here, but it's okay for you to work on your healing. So don't take what she said as cringeworthy. I did initially, because sometimes we can take that, go off that wordplay or who the messenger is. And we allow it to just take on a whole narrative of her own. But when many of us do assess our own marriages, especially where we are now to where we came from, many people can relate to that story. Many people follow social media so much versus figuring out what the roles and the rules and the law is in their own house. That's where we get confused sometimes. Mind your marriage. Take care of your home. So I love everything she said, just about how she was able to figure out where she was. She learned her power and that it wasn't that aggressive little girl. And she worked through letting that girl go. So those are my thoughts. Let me know what your thoughts are and how you felt about it if you saw it. So until then, I will see you all again soon. Bye.